All right, hello and welcome to the Derek Smith Spiel. Today, my first interview ever is with Mr. Grasso. Mr. Grasso, introduce yourself to the audience.
I'm Mr. Grasso. I teach 11th grade history. I've also coached several sports here at Letchworth over my 26 years. So thank you for having me on the show, Derek.
You're welcome. Before we get into your coaching career, let's talk about your high school career in sports.
Not much to tell there. My high school was really big, so it wasn't always the opportunities that you get maybe at a smaller school. For me, it was pretty much everybody played about one sport. So I like golf, so I played golf all through high school, but that's pretty much it.
Okay. So when and why did you get into coaching?
It's actually kind of an interesting story. I had student taught here at Letchworth before I worked here, and I happened to be in the building at the end of this school year, and Coach Eustace came up to me and said, "Hey, I need a modified soccer coach." I said, "Coach," I said, "Eustace, man, I don't know anything about soccer. It doesn't matter. You'll be fine." And so he got me into coaching, and then from there I did soccer, I did basketball, golf, and still 26 years later, still coaching.
So how did you get yourself into soccer? Like, have you ever played soccer?
Nope.
YouTube, went right to YouTube?
Well, back then we had to get the old VHS tape.
Oh.
Yeah, so we had, I'll be honest, I'm not going to lie, I watched some VHS tapes on how to coach soccer. Coach Eustace gave me some drills to do, and, the rest of it you just kind of learn as you go. So it was good, though.
So, coaching basketball. Tell us about the highlights of your career coaching basketball first.
I think the highlights would be, it sounds cliche, but it's like making connections with lots of kids. Mm-hmm. There are still kids that I'll run into. They're not kids anymore; they're adults, and you run into them, and it's just like, it's just really great to see them. So, I think that to me that is probably one of the best highlights. In basketball, we got a chance to go to the finals a couple times, which we didn't win, but it was still like a great experience to go kind of make those kind of runs. But most of it all, I enjoyed most of it was working with the kids. It was the best part.
Yeah. Now, let's talk about from a coaching standpoint. Were you more offensively or defensively minded?
Oh, that's easy. Defense.
Yep. You think defense. So you are a strong believer that defense wins championships?
I am. Yes, I am. I grew up a Detroit Pistons fan. And
yeah.
Detroit Pistons were always
the
about
bad
defense.
Boy Pistons.
Bad boy Pistons. Yeah, little Dennis Rodman.
Mm-hmm. Pre-Bulls.
Yes, pre-Bulls,
pre-hair dye.
Pre-hair dye, pre-Madonna, whatever. And I always defensive part, and also here at Letchworth, a lot of the basketball coaches at the time, Coach Sanderson and Coach McMullen, were all big defensive people. We never could score, but we were always good at stopping other people from scoring.
Yeah.
So I think you kind of just go with what you're good at,
and build from there.
Yep.
From there. That's a good approach. So what was the best quality you could see in a basketball player?
Okay, I always look for kids that, I think the kids, I guess, in a sense, who always had maybe the most success on the teams that we had were kids that were all attitude and effort. That was the two things that were like non-negotiable. Like, you have to play really hard, and you have to be a good teammate, and you have to want to be a good defender. And I look at those qualities, and those kids, we had kids who really couldn't score a whole lot, very offensively limited at times, but they made up for it because they did things the right way. They were good teammates. They hustled. They played hard defense. And if you can get kids to buy into that, you can have success even if you maybe don't have some of the offensive skills per se.
Okay. Real quick, could you move your mic up a little bit?
Oh, sure.
Don't worry. I can cut that out if you'd like to.
Yeah, that's okay.
Now, so you mentioned some people weren't as good at scoring.
Yep.
So how would you scheme them in? And was it difficult for them to buy that they might not be taking all the shots?
A lot of times it depends on the kid.
Mm-hmm.
I think some players certainly would relate to that a lot easier than others. A lot of teams, though, that we had were very team-oriented, and just a lot of kids who just wanted to win. And they were willing to kind of sacrifice the personal glory. Everybody likes to see somebody, score 20 points,
Mhm.
but nobody talks about the kid who shuts down the other team's leading scorer. So I think that, getting the right kids and kind of growing them in a system that preaches this constantly, you do get a lot more buy-in as time goes on. Is it hard for some kids? Yeah, I mean, sometimes, you're not going to be the center of attention. And in order for us to be successful, that's the way it is. And sometimes those conversations are easy and sometimes those conversations are hard. But ultimately, it's what you can do to contribute to our team, our success.
Now, compared all of what you just talked about to coaching golf, is that a totally different game?
Oh, man, totally different animal. Coaching golf is a lot different in a sense that it has its own unique challenges. Golf is both a team sport and an individual sport.
Mm-hmm.
And golf is very much like teaching kids how to play the game. We don't have modified golf. Nobody does. It's not a thing. So a lot of kids we have coming in as ninth graders maybe have never played before. And a lot of it is just getting kids to understand the rules, understand how to behave on a golf course, the etiquette part of it, and then helping them develop a swing that they're going to have some confidence in and go out and start to have some of that success. Golf is a lot of, one of the most famous golf professionals of all times. Somebody asked him, "What's the secret?" He's like, "The secret's in the dirt." Meaning you just got to go out and practice. You got to go out and do it. And the more you do, the better you're going to get.
Yeah. So you mentioned the confidence thing. They say 90% of sports is mental. The number ranges from 90, 95, 99, but there's always a 90 in there. How much of golf do you think is mental?
Well, I agree about 90% of your assessment right there, Derek. Just kidding. I think golf is very, very mental. Okay. It helps if you look at guys on like the PGA Tour now. A lot of them are really good athletes. Dustin Johnson can dunk a basketball, and he's 6'1". Like, it's pretty impressive. Okay, but at the same token, a lot of those guys, mentally, when you go out and play, there's, like, for high school, there's no coach. There's no caddy. It's really all you. Like, you got to figure it out. And if you get in your own head, it's sometimes really hard to get out of it. And so I think, like, mentally speaking, you really do have to be really strong, okay? Because if something goes wrong, you got to figure out, well, what can I do to fix that? How can I salvage this? And that's can be very stressful. So it's a different kind of mentality, I think, than maybe other sports.
Now, I'm not as avid as a golfer, so maybe this is a beginner thing. But would you say from hole to hole, your confidence, your mental game, can that be different? Because one hole, I might hit a birdie. The next hole, I'm 3 over.
Yep.
It's like a hole-to-hole thing. Is that?
That is not. Yeah, I think that's exactly what happens. A lot of it too is, especially because we play the same course a lot. You have holes you like and you feel good about, and then you have holes that terrify you because you just don't have success on those. And a lot of it is trying to get people, like, how do you overcome that adversity? Like, like, oh, hole 6 is really hard for me. Like, well, what can we do to make hole 6 better so that you feel better about it when you go out and play, which is going to lead you to have hopefully more success moving forward.
Now, what are the best qualities to see in a golfer? Like, compared to a basketball player, is it the same thing? You just want an open athlete?
Yeah, I think a lot of it is, in a sense, it's attitude and effort, but it's like a different degree of attitude and effort. Meaning that, like, like in basketball, like, coaches yell a lot. Like, that's part of what you see a lot of times.
Yeah.
Barking, all those kind of things. In golf, I don't yell at anybody. I don't think I've yelled at anybody ever in my entire life, because it's because it is so much more on the individual. There is a lot of, like, you got to build the kid up. Like, how do I get the kid to where they need to go? And that's the same in basketball, but it's done in more of that team kind of setting. Whereas golf, that individual building part helps the overall group. So it is a little bit different in how you approach it. But nobody's doing push-ups to hit the ball in the water kind of thing. So
Yeah.
no worries about that.
So is there something you know now that you wish you knew when you started coaching?
Oh wow, that's a really good question. Man, I think I wish I had known like the little ins and outs of things. Every year, no matter what sport you coach, you always learn something. It always kind of builds into like what you do, whether it's a new drill or just a strategy or just something. You learn something. And there, I can be honest, like, the first time I coached in a finals game, it was very overwhelming. It was just something I never experienced before. But like the next time, which was 2 years later, like there was a lot. It was a lot more not relaxing, but you just felt more comfortable in the situation. So I think it's just a lot of those little things that you can only get from actually doing it that make a really big difference and add up kind of over time. But it's been enjoyable, to say that.
You've always said in class, I've heard you say winning is hard, winning is difficult. So
Yep.
how do you learn to win? Is it winning small things that build up to the big ones?
Sure. I think it's kind of happens one of two ways. There are some teams that win when they're young, and it just happens, and they got it. Other teams you can see coming. Like you go, oh, like wait a year or two, and that group's going to be really good. They just got to kind of figure it out. And I think for a lot of teams, they fall really into that second category because winning is hard. It takes a lot of things to go right to win a title. Everybody complains like, oh, why don't you win a sectional title? And it's like, this is hard. There's only over 100 teams in Section 5, and 6 or 7 of them take home a title. And there's just when you get to the end there's just very little margin for error. And usually you got some good teams playing. It's just a little bit here and there, and it just you appreciate the amount of work and effort that goes into it. But like I said, usually most teams kind of develop into winning by those small steps. Little baby steps lead to something big down the line.
Yeah.
And it just takes time sometimes. You just got to experience it. And sometimes it doesn't always go according to plan. Believe me.
Yeah, and hope is not a plan. That's a Grassoism.
Oh, that hope is never a plan. You are absolutely. I'm glad you learned something in my class. Because, I'd like it to be history, but if you learn hope is not a plan and winning is hard, then you are in great shape. Won't be on your AP test, but you'll be okay.
Now you're always positive, whether it's teaching, coaching. What did you always have a positive philosophy? Did you read about it? When did you transition to a positive mindset?
That's okay. I would say that probably when I first started, I probably yelled a lot more because that was kind of like the style when I started.
Yeah.
Everybody yelled not swearing or anything like that, but just very, very intense. And one of the things that I kind of learned over time is that not every kid responds to that. And I started to see kind of a change in kids that they needed a little bit more positivity. Almost like if I'm going to say a negative thing, they needed 4 or 5 good things. And over time, I just kind of got into the mindset that if that's the thing that's going to be best for the kid, and that's how I can get the most out of them. Most kids don't want to be yelled at all day. I don't blame them. I don't want to be yelled at all day.
Yeah.
Once in a while you do, because that's just part of what it is. But I think it's got to be purposeful. It can't just be yelling for the sake of yelling, because kids tune that out over time. Whereas the positive things, the encouraging things, those build up so that when you do have to maybe raise your voice or get on them, it's taken a lot better instead of being just tuned out. So I think that's kind of one of the changes that I found. And I, just from my own perspective, it seemed to be a better way to approach coaching. Times you yell at kids, times you get, fired up. But there's also times where they just need something kind of calm all the way. They just need that, hey, it's okay.
That consistency.
Yeah,
the support.
And that's what they, and it is, it's a mutual kind of relationship because, every team is different. Every person you work with is different, and a lot of coaching is finding out what makes kids tick, just like teaching what makes a kid tick, so that I can give them the best possible experience, and that's tailor made. Some kids, they're better when you don't get on them, and then there are other kids that they really do like it when you're kind of fired up at them all the time, and you learn that, and you tailor what you do for those kids and that group of kids that you have.
So it's because it's so individual based, like how you coach each kid. Did you ever hand out like a form, what helps them most, or was that all just picked up based on?
A lot of it is, this is a good question. A lot of it is just getting to know kids.
Yeah.
Part of being a good coach or being a good teacher is you got to find out what makes kids tick. And the only way you do that is by interacting with them. And the more interactions you have with them, the more you kind of figure out how they go about their business. Some kids, they really want a lot of conversation. They want a lot of interaction because that's what they feel gives them that confidence. Some kids, they are more like just kind of, they don't necessarily want that. They want just, hey, just kind of let me know if I got to fix this or I got to do that. But they don't necessarily want that banter, that joking, that connection. And you just got to figure that out. And you have to respect that too, because, like the goal is to get the most out of the kid and make it the best experience for the kid and thus the team. So yeah, it really is it's like being a psychologist, truthfully. What makes kids tick? It's good coaching. That's what you find out.
So let's bounce back to golf for a second.
Sure.
Do you think that is an undervalued sport? Golf. Obviously, you're a big fan of it.
Oh yeah.
But some people, they just say it's boring. What would you like? What do you have to say about that?
I think for a lot of it is like if I had a sales pitch golf.
Yes.
Okay. Well, I would tell somebody is like, look, it is a sport. Okay. I always tell our golfers one of the first things they hear is you're an athlete. Like we are athletes. We do athletic things. Hitting a stationary ball may look easy, but it's actually really, really hard. Okay. So the one is you have to think like it's not just I'm just kind of walking around like, no, I'm an athlete. Okay. And so I think that's the first part of it. Second part of it is if I was pitching it to somebody, I would be like, look, listen, this is something that you can do the rest of your life. A lot of sports, by the time you get to your early to mid 20s, you're not going to be able to compete at the same level that you are able to when you are 16, 17, and 18. And, I remember I was golfing one time and there was an 82-year-old guy who came up and ended up playing with us. And I was, I was in my 30s. I'm like, it's like pretty prime golf.
Yeah.
And he smoked me by the end. Like I was just like, this guy doesn't miss. And he played his game. He just did his thing, and he had been doing it he'd been playing golf for 72 years. Like, okay, like that's pretty impressive. I also think too is the fact that it's something that you can always get better at. Nobody shoots an 18 for 18 holes. You can always get better at it. And that challenge of getting better and improving, that's something you have total control over. There's no excuses in golf. You can't blame anything.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you can try and blame the weather or God or whatever you want. No, it's all you. Like you hit that shot, that's on you. And I think that ownership is really appealing to athletes because you're in control of that. And sometimes there's not always things that you are in control of. If you're in a team sport, sometimes you can't control your teammates. You pass them the ball and they drop it, like, okay. But in golf, it's like, yeah, you hit that shot, that's on you.
Yeah. So let's say you have a new golfer.
Yep.
They say the short game, that's half the game. Yep. So is the first thing you teach them how to putt, or?
First thing we try to do is, you just kind of watch a kid, and honestly, you kind of see like like what components they have to be successful and try to build on those things. Because if you can build those things early, they have more success later on. Short game is definitely a really big thing, probably once you've started playing a little bit, simply because it is the part that you can shave a lot of strokes off of, and that's where you're going to see the most improvement as you get better. By the time you get to, where you can play reasonably well, you're probably hitting the ball okay. It's just, are you putting and chipping pretty good? Are you good around the green? And that's where, even as like somebody who played golf for a long time, when I got married and then the kids came along, I didn't get to practice as much as I wanted to. But I remember the kind of in those summer times, I worked really hard on putting and chipping. And even though I don't play as much now, I actually shoot better because all that work has translated. I still have all that moving forward. When I just don't get to play as much as I would like. So, but yeah, short game is definitely a big thing. But just getting a kid comfortable and feeling confident they can hit the ball and just keep it moving, and it'll be okay.
Yeah, I love chipping. There's just something, I don't know how to explain it. You can see the ball the whole way. I guess it's because everything's closer, but it still feels like a shot.
Oh, sure, yeah. I mean, let's put it this way: nobody gets. It's more exciting to chip a ball in off the green than to make like an 8-foot putt.
Yeah.
Because you think like, oh, I can probably make an 8-foot putt, but I'm far away and I'm chipping and I make it. Like that's something cool, So yeah, I think chipping is a lot of fun. For me, like I like putting. I'm a good putter, so it's probably the part of the game I enjoy the most. But I do like driving the ball, just fun to just swing really, really hard.
Yeah.
And just hopefully it goes straight. But it's just kind of we let a little aggression out, which is kind of good.
Now, swinging hard compared to good form, do you always believe that a fluid swing will outdrive the hardest swinger?
Yep, hands down. Because I saw it. We had a kid in high school who was, when I was a senior, he was in 7th grade. And he did not have a really long backswing, almost like a half swing, really. But he would hit the ball perfect every time down the middle. And, we were, 18-year-old kids. We were just swinging out of our shoes.
Yeah.
And our golf balls are flying everywhere. And he would beat us almost every time. Now, granted, his dad owned the golf course. It probably helped. But, just seeing that swing, I was like, maybe there is something to not like swinging out of my shoes. Maybe there is a little bit more to it. But, yeah, I would say, yes, if you can develop that contact, the power will come because the contact is better.
Right.
But I'm not going to lie, it's fun to swing really, really hard.
Oh, of course. That's why they have driving ranges.
That's why they have driving ranges. That's right.
To swing hard and to hit the guy driving by.
You never do that, Derek. That's like.
Oh, is that golf etiquette?
It's not a moving target. No. Now I'm not going to say I've never done that, but I'm just saying. Do as I say, not as I do. Right? I'm one of those.
That's right. So to wrap things up here, you told me a story about a foreign exchange student who came to play golf.
Yes.
That's one of the best stories I've ever heard. Tell the audience that story.
Sure. Okay. So we had an exchange student from Southeast Asia, Pete. We just called him Pete because it was really hard to pronounce his name, and he was cool. He was just like, call me Pete. I'm like, perfect, Pete. And so Pete ended up playing JV golf, and we were out playing one time, and Pete, took it very, very seriously, and kind of like a seriousness you didn't really kind of see a lot out of high school kids.
Yeah.
And I was talking to him. I said one day, Pete, I said, man, you were making so much progress, because he was just getting better and better, and he was just working, and he wanted feedback, and he would practice, and he'd go home, practice in his backyard with his exchange family there. And I remember one day I said, Pete, I said, man, you were doing a great job. He says, well, I'm motivated, Mr. Grasso. I said, what do you mean? He goes, well, he says, where I come from, he says, it's very hard. There's not a lot of opportunities to go on a golf course. There's a lot of driving ranges, but golf courses are kind of like, you have to be good to go on a golf course. And he said, my dad golfs, and he's pretty good at it. And he said, when I found out that Letchworth had golf, he said, I was super excited because that would be a way for me to get better, so that eventually when I go home, I can play with my dad. And I'm like, sort of like, whoa, like that's really awesome. And I remember like he ended up calling, I think Mr. Sanderson, or maybe it might have been Mr. Murtzak, and he was like, I got to play golf on the golf course with my dad. He was just like super excited to let everybody know that he had gotten this opportunity. And he was like, I wouldn't have been able to do that if I hadn't got to play high school golf. And it was just like one of those stories that you sit there and you go like, dang, like that's winner, winner, chicken dinner. Okay, I mean, having somebody have success and reaching the goal that they wanted to get, and just being a little part of that, like that's what makes coaching awesome. When you see those success stories, whether they're big or small, some kids go win a state title in wrestling. Some kids, break 50 on a golf course. Some teams, win a division title. Some teams win 2 games, which maybe that's a win. It's just really neat to see those experiences for kids, and to try to be a little part of that, which again is why I think we all coach. We just want to see kids have these really great opportunities and have the best possible ways to get the success that they want.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's why people should do it.
Oh yeah, 100%. 100%.
That's great. Well, thank you.
Wow,
thank you for the interview, and thank you for listening. You can listen to this and more episodes on the Derek Smith Spiel on Spotify, also on Collects. Take a look at the card company, Derek Smith Stock. And while you're at it, why not go on to YouTube and check out Dylan Smith's Outdoors. Thank you.